There's a photograph on my desk that most people assume is my proudest moment. Me, standing in front of the building I designed, the one that won the American Institute of Architects Award last spring. 37 stories of glass and steel reaching into the Manhattan skyline. In the photo, I'm smiling. What people don't know is that 20 minutes after that photo was taken, my phone rang. It was my father. First time he'd called in 6 years. He wanted to congratulate me. Said he always knew I had it in me. Said he was proud. I hung up. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm 43 years old. I've built a career that most people spend their entire lives dreaming about. I have a corner office with a view of Central Park. My designs have been featured in Architectural Digest 3 times. I make more money than I know what to do with. And I did all of it without my father, not because of him, despite him. There's a difference. And I'm done pretending there isn't. People love redemption stories. They love the narrative where the absent father somehow becomes the catalyst for success. He made you stronger. The pain motivated you. You should thank him for teaching you what not to be. I've heard it all. From well-meaning friends, from colleagues, from my own therapist for the first year I saw her. But here's what I know now, what took me 4 decades to understand. I don't owe gratitude to the man who taught me what absence feels like. I don't owe thanks to the person who made me believe that love was something you had to earn through achievement. And I sure as hell don't owe credit to someone who showed up after the work was done, wanting to bask in light he never helped create. This is the story of how I learned to own my own success. How I stopped letting other people write the narrative of my life. How I finally said what I needed to say. Let me take you back. Not to the beginning, because every story about absent fathers starts the same way. Let me take you to the moment I realized I'd been giving him credit for my accomplishments without even knowing it. It was 3 years ago. I was in Dr. Rachel Lawson's office, the therapist I'd been seeing since my second divorce. We were talking about my work habits. The fact that I stayed in the office until midnight most nights. The fact that I couldn't remember the last time I took a vacation. The fact that I measured my worth in completed projects and client approvals. Where do you think this drive comes from? She asked. I gave her the answer I'd been giving myself for years. My father, he abandoned us when I was 9. Left my mom to raise 3 kids alone. I learned early that I had to work harder than everyone else. Had to prove something. She nodded. Wrote something down. Then she asked me a question that changed everything. Prove something to whom? I opened my mouth to answer. Closed it, opened it again. To him, I finally said. To show him he was wrong. To show him I didn't need him. So, she said, leaning forward slightly, your entire career, your success, your drive, it's all connected to him? He gets credit for all of it? No, the word came out sharper than I intended. He doesn't get credit, he left. He wasn't there. But you just said your drive comes from him, from proving something to him. So in your narrative, your father is the reason for your success. Even in his absence, he's the central figure in your story. I sat there, in that office with the too soft couch and the white noise machine by the door, and felt something crack open inside my chest. She was right, and I hated it. Well, let me tell you about my childhood, but not in the way you expect. Not in the way that makes my father the villain who motivated the hero. Just the facts, the way they actually happened. My father's name was David Thompson. He was a mechanic. Had his own shop on the west side of Detroit, where we lived until I was 9. He wasn't a monster, wasn't violent. Didn't drink, didn't gamble, didn't have another family hidden somewhere. He was just absent, even when he was physically present. I remember being 6 years old, bringing him a drawing I'd made. A house with a family standing in front. Stick figures with circle heads and straight-line smiles. I was so proud of it. I'd used every crayon in the box. He glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds. That's nice, Marcus. Then back to his newspaper. I stood there, holding that drawing, waiting for something more. What else could he say? What did it look like inside? Who were all the people? Did I have a favorite color I used? But the conversation was over. I was dismissed without ever really being seen. That became the pattern. I'd show him my report cards, all ass. Good job. I'd tell him about making the basketball team. That's great, son. I'd ask if he wanted to come to my games. We'll see. I'm pretty busy at the shop. He never came to a single game. Not one. When I was 9, he sat us down at the kitchen table. Me, my older sister Jennifer, my younger brother Aaron, Mom was standing behind us, her hand on my shoulder. I could feel her fingers digging in, even through my shirt. "I'm leaving," he said. Not, "I'm leaving your mother." Not, "We're getting a divorce," just, "I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" Jennifer asked. She was 12 then, old enough to understand this wasn't a business trip. "I got a place across town. You can visit on weekends." We visited exactly 3 times. The first weekend, he took us to McDonald's and sat across from us while we ate, checking his watch every few minutes. The second weekend, he forgot we were coming. We stood on his doorstep for 20 minutes before a neighbor told us he'd seen him leave that morning with a suitcase. The third weekend, Mom told us we didn't have to go if we didn't want to. We didn't want to. Here's what people don't tell you about absent fathers. The absence isn't the worst part. It's the presence that came before. It's knowing that someone is physically capable of being there and chooses not to be. It's the conscious decision to leave that haunts you, not the actual leaving. I spent my teenage years doing what a lot of kids in my situation do. I tried to become excellent. If I couldn't make my father stay through just being his son, maybe I could earn his attention through achievement. I threw myself into school. Straight A's weren't enough. I needed to be valedictorian. I needed to get a full scholarship. I needed to prove that I didn't need him, which was its own kind of twisted logic. How do you prove you don't need someone? By constantly working to show them what they're missing. I got into Cornell. Full ride, architecture program. Mom cried when the acceptance letter came. Held me so tight I could barely breathe. "You did it, baby. You did it all by yourself." But I didn't feel like I'd done it by myself. I felt like I'd done it for someone who wasn't even watching. The day I moved into my dorm, I called him. I don't know why. Some part of me still hoping he'd say he was proud, that he'd made a mistake, that he wanted to be part of my life. The phone rang 4 times, then voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I haven't called him since. I excelled at Cornell. Not because I loved architecture, though I came to. I excelled because achievement was the only language I knew how to speak. The only way I knew how to exist in the world. I graduated top of my class. Got recruited by 3 major firms in New York. Chose the most prestigious one, even though they offered the lowest salary. Prestige mattered more than money. Awards mattered. Recognition mattered. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I was still collecting evidence for a case I'd been building since I was 9 years old. See? I'm worth something. See? You were wrong to leave? My 20s were a blur of 80-hour weeks and finished projects. I became known as the guy who never missed a deadline, who always delivered exactly what the client wanted before they knew they wanted it, who made senior associate by 28, who made partner by 32. I also made time for exactly 0 relationships. I dated, sure, but nothing serious. Nothing that required vulnerability. Nothing that might reveal the truth, that I had no idea how to let someone close without waiting for them to leave. My first marriage happened almost by accident. Her name was Amanda. We met at a gallery opening. She was an art buyer, sharp and confident in a way that I found both terrifying and magnetic. She pursued me, which in retrospect should have been my first clue. I was attracted to people who wanted me because I didn't know how to want myself. We got married after 8 months, divorced after 2 years. The reasons were predictable. I worked too much. I was emotionally unavailable. I prioritized my career over our relationship. All true. All symptoms of a deeper problem I wasn't ready to name yet. "You're just like your father," she said when she left. She meant it as an insult, a way to hurt me. It worked. But not for the reason she thought. I wasn't like my father. My father gave up. My father chose absence. I was present, wasn't I? I was there, in the physical space in the same apartment. But even as I defended myself in my head, I knew she was right. I was emotionally absent in the same way he had been. The work was just my newspaper. My excuse to not be fully present, to not risk being seen. My second marriage lasted even less time. Different woman, same pattern. I met Lisa at a conference. She was a landscape architect. We bonded over shared professional interests, which I mistook for compatibility. We got married because it seemed like the next logical step. Like checking a box on a list of life achievements: successful career, check. Beautiful wife, check. Manhattan apartment, check. We divorced because one night, after I'd canceled our anniversary dinner for the third year in a row, she asked me a question I couldn't answer. "Marcus, who are you trying to impress?" "No one, I just care about my work." "No," she said, and her voice was so tired, so defeated. "You care about proving something. I just don't know what or to whom. And I can't compete with a ghost." That was 4 years ago. That's when I started seeing Dr. Lawson. Not because I wanted to change, but because I wanted to understand why 2 marriages had failed. Why I couldn't seem to build anything lasting in my personal life when my professional life was so carefully constructed. For the first year, I talked about my work stress, about the pressure of managing teams, about difficult clients. Dr. Lawson listened, asked questions, never pushed. Slowly, we started talking about my childhood, about my father, about the pattern I'd built my entire life around. And then came that day, 3 years ago, when she asked me who I was trying to prove something to, and my entire narrative collapsed, because she was right. I'd spent 34 years giving my father credit for my success, not directly. Not in words, but in the framework I'd built my entire life around. Every achievement was evidence in a case against him. Every award was proof that he'd been wrong. Every promotion was a way of showing him what he'd missed. But here's the thing about building your life around proving someone wrong. You're still building it around them. They're still the center of your story. You're still giving them power. What would happen, Dr. Lawson asked in one of our sessions, if you took your father out of the narrative entirely? What do you mean? I mean, what if your success has nothing to do with him? What if you're good at what you do simply because you're good at it? What if your drive comes from something internal, not reactive? What if you're successful despite him, not because of him? I sat with that question for weeks. Turned it over in my mind during long nights in the office, during morning runs through Central Park, during the quiet hours before dawn when I couldn't sleep. Despite him, not because of him, it seemed like semantics at first. A small difference in phrasing that didn't really matter. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was everything. Because of him implied causation. It meant his absence created my success. It meant I owed him something, gratitude, maybe, or at least acknowledgement. It meant that without his leaving, I wouldn't be who I am. Despite him meant something entirely different. It meant I succeeded in opposition to the circumstances he created. It meant my achievements were mine, built on my own foundation, through my own effort. It meant he got exactly 0 credit. I started trying to identify which of my qualities came from me and which ones I'd developed in reaction to him. The discipline, that was mine. I'd always been organized, even as a small child. The creativity, mine. I could see the world in shapes and spaces before I ever picked up a pencil. The drive, that's where it got complicated. The healthy drive, the one that made me love solving complex problems, that made me excited to see a design come to life, that was mine. The unhealthy drive, the one that kept me in the office until midnight, that made me measure my worth in awards and recognition, that made me panic if I wasn't constantly producing, that came from him. From trying to fill a void he'd created. I started doing an exercise Dr. Lawson suggested. Every time I accomplished something, every time I felt that familiar surge of achievement, I'd ask myself, who is this for? The first few times, the answer was still him, to prove him wrong, to show him he was wrong. But slowly, as I practiced, as I became more conscious of the pattern, the answer started to change. Who is this for? Me, because I love what I do. Who is this for? Me, because solving this problem feels good. Who is this for? Me, because creating something beautiful matters to me, not to him. To me, it sounds simple. It sounds like the kind of thing you'd read on an inspirational poster in a corporate office. But it was revolutionary. It was the difference between living my life as a response to someone else's choices and living it as an expression of my own. Around this time, I started making changes. Small ones at first. I started leaving the office at 7 instead of midnight. Started taking weekends off. Started saying no to projects that didn't excite me, even prestigious ones. Started prioritizing joy over achievement. I also started dating again, but differently. I dated people because I enjoyed their company, not because they fit some image of what my life should look like. I was honest about my limitations, about the work I was still doing on myself. I stopped pretending I had everything figured out. I met Claire about 2 years ago. She's a middle school teacher, makes a fraction of what I make, has zero interest in architecture or design. When I told her about my work, she said, "That's nice," and then told me about a student who'd finally understood fractions after weeks of struggling. The light in her eyes when she talked about teaching, that was what I fell for. Her passion for something that had nothing to do with me. We've been together for 2 years. We're not married. We might never be, and that's okay. I'm learning that relationships don't have to follow a script. That love doesn't have to be proven through traditional milestones. That being with someone can simply be about enjoying who they are, not about checking boxes or building evidence for a case no one but me cares about. But here's where the story takes its turn. Here's where I learned that changing your narrative isn't enough. You have to defend it. Last spring, my firm won the AYA Award for the Morrison Building. 37 stories of residential and commercial space in Lower Manhattan. It was the culmination of 3 years of work, the most challenging project of my career. The one I'm genuinely, truly proud of. Not because it proves something to someone else, but because it's objectively beautiful and functional and represents everything I've learned about creating spaces where people actually want to live and work. The award ceremony was huge. 500 people, press, photographers, my face in Architectural Digest. Mom flew in from Detroit. Jennifer and Aaron came. Claire was there, proud in a way that felt clean and uncomplicated. And in the middle of all that joy, in the middle of that moment that was supposed to be mine, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, didn't recognize the number, but something made me step outside into the hallway, away from the noise and celebration, and answer. "Marcus? It's Dad." I hadn't heard his voice in 6 years. Not since I'd told him to stop calling after my second divorce. Not since I'd made it clear that I was done waiting for him to be the father I'd needed. "How did you get this number?" "From Jennifer. I asked her to get it for me." I saw the article in Architectural Digest. "Marcus, I'm so proud of you. You've done amazing things. You've become exactly the man I always knew you could be." There it was. The narrative I'd been fighting for 3 years served up in his voice. The implication that he'd seen something in me. That he'd always known. That his absence had somehow been part of a larger plan that led to my success. And here's what I realized in that moment. Standing in a hallway with my phone pressed to my ear and the sounds of my celebration muffled behind a closed door. I had a choice. I could accept this narrative. I could let him be proud. I could let him have this moment, this connection to my achievement, or I could tell the truth. "You don't get to be proud," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "You weren't there. You don't get to take credit for any of this." "I'm not taking credit. I'm just saying I'm proud of you. Can't a father be proud of his son?" "You're not my father, not in any way that matters. A father is someone who shows up. Someone who's there for the small moments, not just the victories you read about in magazines. You taught me exactly one thing, that absence has consequences. And the consequence of your absence is that you don't get to share in this. Marcus, I know I wasn't there the way I should have been, but I was young. I was struggling. I didn't know how to be a father. I did the best I could, and there it was, the excuse. The justification. The reframing that would make his absence somehow understandable, forgivable, part of a larger story where everyone was doing their best and no one was really at fault. "Your best wasn't good enough," I said, "and that's not my problem. I'm not responsible for your limitations. I'm not responsible for your struggles. You were the adult, I was the child. You had one job and you failed at it. And now, 34 years later, you want to show up and be proud? You want credit for something you had no part in building? I'm not asking for credit. Yes, you are, by calling. By saying you always knew I could do this. You're inserting yourself into my narrative. You're making my achievement about you. And I won't let you do that. There was silence on the other end of the line. Long enough that I thought he might have hung up. Then, so what? I'm just supposed to not care? Not be proud? Not acknowledge what you've accomplished? You're supposed to understand that your pride is irrelevant. That your acknowledgement is irrelevant. That you are irrelevant to my success. I built this without you, not because of you, despite you. Do you understand the difference? More silence. I'm sorry you feel that way, he finally said. I don't feel that way. I know that way. There's a difference. I hung up. Stood in that hallway for another minute, my heart racing, my hands shaking slightly. Then I went back into the ceremony. Back to Mom and Jennifer and Aaron and Claire. Back to the people who'd actually been there. Who'd actually earned the right to celebrate with me. Claire took one look at my face and knew something had happened. You okay? Yeah, I said. And I meant it. I'm okay, but the call stayed with me. For days, I turned it over in my mind. Questioned whether I'd been too harsh. Whether I should have been more forgiving. Whether holding on to anger for 34 years made me just as bad as him. I brought it up with Dr. Lawson in our next session. Do you think I was wrong to say what I said? Do you think you were wrong? I asked you first. I smiled slightly. She smiled back. This was an old dance between us. I think you told the truth. I think you defended your narrative. I think you refused to let someone else take credit for work they didn't do. Whether that's right or wrong isn't for me to say. How does it feel? It feels, paused, searching for the right word. It feels clean. Like I finally drew a line that needed to be drawn, like I took ownership of my own story. She nodded. There's this idea in our culture that we owe gratitude to the people who hurt us, that we should thank our abusers for making us stronger, that pain is a gift that produces growth. But that's not how it works. Pain doesn't create growth. Response to pain creates growth. You didn't become successful because your father left. You became successful because of how you responded to his leaving, because of the choices you made, because of the work you did. He doesn't get credit for your response to his actions, but people keep telling me I should forgive him, that holding on to anger will only hurt me, that he did the best he could. Maybe he did. Maybe his best was limited by his own wounds and limitations. That's probably true. But you're allowed to acknowledge that his best wasn't good enough. You're allowed to refuse to give him credit for your success. Forgiveness doesn't mean rewriting history. It doesn't mean pretending the absence didn't hurt. And it definitely doesn't mean being grateful for pain. I sat with that, let it sink in. So I don't owe him anything? You don't owe him anything? You especially don't owe him gratitude for wounds he inflicted. Even if you eventually turned those wounds into something else, that transformation was yours, not his. I left that session feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, truly free. Free from the narrative that my success was connected to his failure. Free from the obligation to make his absence mean something. Free from the need to prove anything to anyone but myself. Let me be clear about something. I'm not saying forgiveness is wrong. I'm not saying everyone needs to cut off their absent parents. I'm saying that you get to decide what your story means. You get to decide who gets credit. You're allowed to refuse the narrative that pain is a gift. That struggle makes you stronger, that you should be grateful for wounds. Some wounds are just wounds. They don't transform into anything beautiful. They don't teach you anything except what hurt feels like. And the fact that you survived them, that you thrived despite them, that's on you, not on the person who inflicted them. Over the next few months, I got a few more calls from my father. I didn't answer. He sent an email. I didn't respond. Not out of anger, though there was still anger, out of clarity. He had nothing to offer me, no wisdom I needed. No acknowledgement that would change anything. His presence in my life, even in this limited way, was purely extractive. He wanted something from me, connection to my success, validation of his pride, and I had nothing I wanted from him. That's what closure looks like sometimes. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a tearful reconciliation. Just a clear-eyed understanding that someone doesn't get to be part of your story unless they've earned it, and earning it takes more than biology. It takes presence, consistency, the willingness to be there for the hard parts, not just the celebrations. 6 months ago, I got word through Jennifer that he's sick, something with his heart. She asked if I wanted to visit him. Said he'd like to see me before it's too late. I thought about it, really thought about it. Imagine walking into a hospital room, seeing him diminished by age and illness, having a deathbed reconciliation that would make a good story. The son who finally forgave his father, the absent father who finally apologized, the healing that came right before the end. But that's not my story. That's a story someone else would write for me if I let them. The truth is messy, eh? The truth is that some relationships don't heal, some absences are too long. Some wounds don't close just because time is running out. And that's okay, that's allowed. I told Jennifer I wasn't going. She understood. Aaron was angry, said I'd regret it. Sighed, I was being cold, said I was letting bitterness win. But it's not bitterness. It's boundaries. It's knowing the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I can forgive my father for being limited, for doing his inadequate best, for being human and flawed without pretending that we have a relationship worth preserving. I can release anger without creating closeness. I've thought a lot about what I'd say if I saw him, what the conversation would look like. In my imagination, it goes something like this. I'd walk into that hospital room. He'd be smaller than I remember, older. The illness would have taken something from him that age alone couldn't. Marcus, he'd say, you came. I came. But not for the reason you think. I came to tell you something I need you to understand. He'd nod. Wait, I don't forgive you. I don't hate you either. I've moved past you. You're not the villain in my story anymore. You're not the obstacle I overcame. You're not the wound that made me stronger. You're just not that important. And I need you to understand that your pride in me, your regret for leaving, your wish for reconciliation, none of that matters to me. It's too late. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I've built a life that doesn't include you. A life I'm proud of. A life that exists completely separately from the question of whether you're in it or not. I understand, he'd say. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. I'm successful. I'm happy. I have people in my life who love me and who I love back. I've built something beautiful, both literally and figuratively. And none of that is because of you. All of it is despite you. Do you understand the difference? I think so. Because of you would mean your absence motivated me. That your leaving taught me something valuable. That the pain you caused somehow transformed into fuel. And that's the narrative people want. It's the story that makes sense. The redemptive arc where the abandoned child becomes successful to show his father what he missed. But that's not my story. My story is that I succeeded in spite of the obstacles you created. That I built a life despite having a father who chose absence. That my achievements are mine, built on my own foundation, through my own work. You get zero credit. Your pride is irrelevant. Your regret changes nothing. In this imagined conversation, he'd have tears in his eyes. He'd apologize. He'd say he understood. He'd try one last time to connect, and I'd tell him no. Not out of cruelty, but out of honesty. Because the time for that connection passed 34 years ago, and you don't get to reclaim it when it's convenient. When you're dying and want absolution. When you've read about your son's success in a magazine and realized what you missed. But I'm not going to have that conversation. Because he doesn't deserve even that much of my energy. He doesn't get my final words, my closure speech, my moment of clarity. Those are mine, and I'm keeping them. This probably makes me sound cold, unforgiving, like I'm the one with the problem, holding on to anger that serves no purpose. I've heard all the quotes. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is setting a prisoner free and discovering that prisoner was you. But here's what those quotes miss. Sometimes the prisoner isn't anger. Sometimes the prisoner is the narrative that you owe something to the people who hurt you. That you need to transform your pain into gratitude. That you should thank the people who taught you what absence feels like. I'm not that prisoner anymore. I've set myself free by refusing to give credit where it isn't due, by owning my own success completely and without qualification, by understanding that I built my life despite the obstacles I faced, not because of them. There's a phrase I've been thinking about a lot lately, something Viktor Frankl wrote. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But I think there's a second part to that. After you change yourself, you get to decide what the situation meant. You get to narrate your own transformation. My father couldn't change. Maybe he tried, maybe he didn't. It doesn't matter anymore. But I changed. I transformed myself from a kid whose worth depended on external validation into a man who knows his own value. From someone building a case against his father into someone building a life for himself. From reactive to intentional. From bitter to free. And that transformation is mine. I did that work. I made those changes. I built that life. Not because of him, despite him. Last week, I was working on a new project. A community center in Brooklyn. It's not prestigious. Won't win any awards. But it's the project I'm most excited about in years because it's not about achievement. It's about creating space for people who need it, for families, for kids who might have absent fathers of their own someday. I was sketching out the layout, thinking about how light would move through the building when Claire came into my office. "You look happy," she said. I am happy. Because of the project? Because of the project. Because of you? Because of this life we're building. Because I finally figured out what I'm working for. What are you working for? Me. Just me. Not to prove anything. Not to show anyone what they're missing. Just because I love what I do and I'm good at it and it matters to me. That's enough, she smiled. Kissed the top of my head, left me to my work. And in that moment I realized something. Happiness is the best revenge. Not happiness in spite of someone, like you're still thinking about them. Just happiness. Period. The kind that exists completely independently of the people who tried to diminish you. The kind that doesn't require an audience or acknowledgement or validation. I don't know if my father is still alive. I don't check. I've asked my siblings not to update me. If he dies, I'll hear about it eventually. I might go to the funeral. I might not. Either way is fine. Either way is my choice. Either way doesn't change the fundamental truth of my life, that I built something beautiful without him. There's a building in Manhattan with my name on it, literally in small letters near the entrance, designed by Marcus Thompson. Every day, thousands of people walk past that building. Most don't notice the name. They're thinking about their own lives, their own struggles, their own stories. And that's perfect because the building isn't about me. It's about creating space for other people's lives to happen. But I know my name is there. I know what I built. I know what it took. Every late night, every revision, every moment of doubt, every breakthrough, every choice to keep going when it would have been easier to quit. That's all mine, every bit of it. And when people ask me about my success, about how I got here, about what motivated me, I tell them the truth now. Not the redemptive version where pain transformed into purpose, the actual truth. I'm good at what I do. I work hard. I care about creating beautiful, functional spaces. That's it. That's the whole story. Some people push back, want the dramatic narrative. But surely your childhood shaped you? Your father leaving must have affected your drive? My childhood shaped me. My father's absence affected me, but my success isn't because of those things. It's despite them. And there's a difference. Most people don't understand the distinction. That's okay. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm just claiming my own narrative. Refusing to give credit where it isn't due. Owning my own achievements completely. Because here's what I know now, what I wish I'd known at 9 years old, at 16, at 25. You don't owe gratitude for wounds. You don't owe thanks to the people who taught you what abandonment feels like. You don't owe acknowledgement to someone whose only contribution to your success was their absence. Your transformation is yours, your growth is yours, your success is yours, built on your foundation, through your work, with your choices, despite, not because of. I'm 43 years old. I've built a career I'm proud of. I'm in a relationship with someone who sees me clearly and loves me anyway. I have family I'm close to and friends I trust. I sleep well at night. I take vacations. I know what joy feels like without achievement attached to it. And I did all of it without my father. Not as a rejection of him, though it started that way. Not to prove him wrong, though I spent years in that pattern. I did it simply by doing it. By showing up for myself in the way he never showed up for me. By being present in my own life. By refusing to let his absence define me even as I acknowledged its impact. This morning I got an email from a young architect. Said he'd read about me, that my story inspired him. Said his own father left when he was young and he was trying to figure out how to build a career without that foundation of paternal support. I wrote back, "You already have everything you need. Your talent is yours. Your drive is yours. Your success, when it comes, will be yours. Don't let anyone, especially an absent parent, take credit for what you build. Own your own story completely. You're not succeeding because of their absence. You're succeeding despite it. And that makes it even more yours." I don't know if he understood. Maybe he will eventually. Maybe he's still in the phase where he's trying to prove something to someone who isn't watching. Maybe he'll spend years building a case before he realizes he's the only judge that matters, but I'm planting seeds. Offering the narrative I wish someone had given me at 21. The one that says, you are enough, your work is enough. Your achievements are yours, period, no qualifications. No, despite the odds or because of hardship, just yours. That's the story I'm living now. That's the narrative I'm defending. And that's the legacy I'm building, not for my father, not in response to his choices, but simply because it's mine to build. I'm successful, I'm happy, I'm free, and I will never thank him for any of it.